Okay, we can start. Welcome, everyone, and welcome to Lead Engagement with AI. So this session is going to be how to create repeatable 30 days learning sprints to use AI for your account-based marketing processes. So new AI tools are coming up every day. Actually, every week there are better tools or AI increase the possibilities of what can be done. So where to start? What we notice is that indeed a lot of teams have struggles to understand where it really makes sense to put their time and energy and where to start with all this AI hype. So how can you use the existing tools in a way that makes sense for your company, try to avoid the hype, and ideally generate real business results for your company? Well, that's where this workshop comes in. But before we start, let me tell you a little bit more about myself and why I'm here. So, my name is Federico. I'm a tech entrepreneur. And in my experience, I blend digital marketing, digital design, and tech. One of the things that I'm passionate about is to turn complex concepts into solutions that are easy for people to use and to understand. I like to learn new things and also like to share my learnings in sessions as I'm doing today. I'm the founder of Sparker, and since this month we are launching Oncodex. And this event is actually an Oncodex event. So, what is Oncodex? The idea behind Oncodex is to really empower European companies to be more competitive globally by adopting AI with confidence. Why? Because, as we said before, there is a lot of hype around AI, but a lot of people don't really know what AI can do, and even if it makes sense to invest time and energy into AI. So, the idea of Oncodex is to help them apply AI confidently with end-to-end solution that go from consultancy and implementation all the way to teaching and trainings for companies that don't need a full implementation yet. And now let's jump into the content of today. So, if you're here today, if you're assisting to this live stream, chances are that you are in one of these buckets. You either started using AI, but you don't really know where to start with it, or you want to test with AI, but it's not clear how much time it's going to take for you and your team, so you don't want to do it yet. Or you have tried some AI solutions, some AI experiments, but they're a bit scattered, they're random, and they're not really conducted to your marketing strategy. Or you notice that you and your team are wasted sometimes to try to apply tools and implement these tools instead of building real systems. So, in order to help you, we are hosting this event today. Let's have a look at the agenda. We're going to look at how AI is a competitive edge for your company. What are some of the challenges that are related to introducing AI into normal processes? AI in data. Then we will look at the 30 days AI sprint that we have developed with Codex and that we are using with companies that are interested into developing AI for their own processes. And finally, we'll wrap up with some conclusions. Now, the first thing, AI is not a golden ticket. AI is not your golden ticket to put everything on autopilot and then stop thinking about account-based marketing. Actually, quite the opposite. Before implementing AI at a level that makes sense and that you can comfortably relate to, you have to put some time and effort into it, probably more than what you are expecting. So today we will look at when it makes sense to use AI and when it makes sense not to use AI. So why do you want to use AI? Because AI can make your processes more scalable, more convenient, and more efficient. In essence, what we will see is that AI gives you access to mainly two things: better data and better processes. And the value of AI for account-based marketing is measured into the competitive edge that you can get by accessing better data and better processes versus your competitors. So let's have a look at how AI flows differ from traditional flows. Whereas in traditional flows, you are basically moving data from one place to the other. Like, for example, you have a meeting, you register the data of this meeting into your CRM. With AI-based flow, you're not only moving data from A to B, but you're also building a layer of intelligence or output on top of this result, on top of this data. So after, for example, registering data into your CRM, which by the way, you can also do it automatically, also with AI, you can also tell AI to create a personalized email to the person you just had a meeting with. Now, let's focus for a second on the first part of what we just talked about. So, AI as better data. What is better data? Better data doesn't only mean higher quality data, but it's also data that would be virtually impossible to get without the help of AI. So think, for example, of you want to have a list of all the restaurants in your country that within the last week have changed something to their website or introduced a new online offer. Well, it's possibly, theoretically speaking, it's possible to do it manually, but it is virtually impossible without the help of AI. So we start with the point, data quality. Data quality needs to be accurate so that everything that you build on top of the data, every, say, new result will be accurate as well. You know how they say shit in, shit out, which means that if you don't have good data to support the flow that you're building on top of that, also the rest will be inaccurate, which is why, and we'll see it later on, our suggestion with Uncodex is not to run fully automated AI sprints, AI workflows, but rather to have points in time where you do check the output of AI. The reason for that is because, at least when I'm talking, which is November 2025, especially multi-step AI processes, for example, with ChatGPT, tend to have hallucination if they are run into multiple steps. So considering that you're doing account-based marketing, so the value, the lifetime value of your accounts is high enough to justify some kind of manual input and revision from you, we still recommend that there is some form of manual checking from your side. How to build an account marketing based process based on AI. First of all, you start with solid foundations. Second of all, you always start by examining your current processes. And then third one, you examine your pipeline and your CRM. So that means that even though it's possible to collect a huge number of quantitative data with AI, you actually, where you want to start, you want to start with the qualitative data that come from your knowledge of the market and your knowledge of your ICP. For example, to give you an example based on my industry, what I notice is that often when I talk to new companies, new marketing managers want to redo the website of their company within the first year after they're hired. So it makes sense for me to reach out to them within the first year of them being having this new position, new job, and asking them if it makes sense for them to talk about a new website for their company. This is not something that AI would ever tell me, even though AI gives me the chance to have access to this data. But without the qualitative observation from my side, I would never actually be it would not be possible for me to understand when is the right moment for me to reach out to that person. So it's usually by looking at what you have already done in the past, the knowledge that you have about your ICP, the kind of interaction that you had so far, that you're then able to document your processes, streamline. And actually, what you want to do at this stage is a bit of an internal audit of how well you run account based marketing. So in this moment, questions that it makes sense to ask yourself, the questions where you want to start is mainly to what part of the process costs my team more time in terms of manual entry. So we assume that you know your data, you know when it makes sense to use them, but still there are some steps that require a lot of manual time. And what data I don't have, is it because it's too difficult or is it because it's too time consuming? And that's where AI can help you. Now we look at the second gain that you can achieve with AI, which is AI allows for better workflows. And by better workflows, I mean that AI enables you to run multi-step sequence where You don't have anymore to manually prove everything or do data entry, but rather AI can do it with you with, for example, AI agents. But my suggestion here is to always balance what is possible with one side with what you really need. And the fact that you have potentially access to a wide number of data doesn't mean that you have to use all the data that you could potentially use just because you can. So, for example, when I look at how I use prospecting systems or filters, LinkedIn Navigator, I actually use never more than 20-25% of the filters that I can use. And what you might realize is that, for example, in your case, the fact that a company hires someone recently or fires someone recently or has a new CFO doesn't really make so much difference if what you're selling is, for example, a new tech system. Or maybe it does, and then you have to focus on something else. So, what I'm suggesting here is that you need to have a two-sided approach when it comes to the creation of automation for account-based marketing with AI. So, you always want to start with the processes that you run. Then you want to run tests with data in a controlled way, and you want to see what the new tools allow. And this is really where it often goes wrong. Because what you see is that a lot of teams that haven't documented their internal processes, they often start with what the tools allow. So, for example, you have your new account on Clay, you pay a lot of money for it, and then you say, oh, let me see what's possible in terms of filtering. But you don't really need why you would want to use one specific trigger from Clay, because what you're missing is the qualitative insight that gives context and gives purpose to it. So my suggestion, always start with what you do have, with your personal evaluation of when it makes sense to do something or not to do something else, and then use what an AI enables in a controlled way, always asking yourself, does it make sense for me? Here's an example of an AI-based flow. So, content, it starts with content production. Your team has spent the last 3 months producing a white paper. You now publish it and distribute it. For example, social media and newsletters. What you see, most teams stop here. Then, what good teams do is content repurposing. So, they do what they have spent already a lot of time creating, and they repurpose that into nuggets of content that could be relevant for their network, and that they're easier to reshare. For example, you want to extract an infographic from your report that you can reuse for social media and for one-on-one email communications. And then what you see great teams do is content personalization. So after you have created your content, after you have created a wider number of nugget content around your core content, you want to personalize the way in which you reach out to your accounts, also making it explicit why that specific nugget that you have created would be relevant for them. And that's what AI enables. So let's have a look at what common issues that teams face in this phase. Volume versus team capacity. So all of a sudden, AI enables way more than what you are used to and what you can handle. This creates bottleneck. The question is your team able to absorb the volume that is created this way? The second one is, do you have a structured way of repurposing what you have already created? And then the third problem, which you actually notice only at the end, is that personalization is not executed well. So it all comes across as fake and not credible. In which case, my suggestion is, by all means, just go for something which is very basic, very authentic. No need to no need to fake personalization if it's poorly executed. So, how do you execute personalization well and in a controlled way so that you can implement it gradually and you can learn from it? It doesn't ruin your reputation online and it leads to better business results. Introduce the AI sprint, which is a methodology that we have developed together with the team at Uncodex. The AI sprint is a 5-step process to help you implement AI into your marketing processes. It starts with strategizing, it then goes to content creation, personalization at scale, there is a step of control, and then finally distribution. Let's have a look at all these steps now. Now, the first one, where I want to start, is strategize. We already discussed about the importance of documenting everything. In this phase, what you want to do is to, first of all, make explicit the desired outcome of your sprint. Make it very explicit also what is the ICP, or at least the segment for which you want to test, and then what is the triggering pain that it makes sense for you to test with. Once you've done that, don't forget to document everything. The second one is content. So what you can now do is to ask AI to turn a core piece of content created by you or your team into multiple pieces of content. So you will see here that my suggestion is not to create the content with AI. Why? Because I'm assuming that you are into B2B, complex process, and probably, again, in the year when I'm talking, chances are that your team can still create better reports than what AI can do. And also, this is not a session about how to create content with AI. So, my suggestion is to use AI to refine your content, but I assume that when we're talking, chances are that a report that it took you 3 months to create with surveys, with market analysis, is still better than what AI can create at this point in time. But then my suggestion is to repurpose this content with AI into the nuggets of content that we have shown before. Here you have some example. So for pillar content, pillar assets, those ones where you still want to invest the majority of the time of you and your team, you can think of a report, case study, webinars or tear down, benchmarks, or problem focus guide. Whereas for nugget content, which is what AI can create for you, you can think of a series of LinkedIn posts, you can think of short summaries, you can think of infographic, explainers, email copy, or nurture sequences. Then the third step, it actually doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop here. The third step is personalization at scale. So you also want to make it explicit why you are distributing that specific piece of content to that specific persona and why you think that what you have done would match their interest or their need in this specific moment of time in time. And then we move to the fourth step, which it's one of the most important, and it's also one of those steps that you will not find in many other frameworks. Why? Because a lot of existing SaaS actually are not recommending you to control what they have done, because that would be a bit like questioning the value of the tool that you're using. However, in account-based marketing, I still recommend there is always some form of manual check in all the processes that you're running, because it's simply too important for you. It's too risky not to spend those 10 or 20 seconds just to check what AI has created. And as we have said before, when it comes to multi-step sequences, AI can still hallucinate. So always make sure that there is a step of manual review of whatever AI has created before you start distributing it to your audience. And then we come to the final step, which is automated delivery. So here you set the automation and the trigger that activate it. You can think of how, for example, people interact with your social media. Like someone visited your LinkedIn page and you want to send them a LinkedIn message with an offer, or how people interact with your newsletter or with your website, or email follow up, like if this and that. If people click on a specific link, then you want to send them maybe another email with a different piece of content. So here is really where the magic happens, and it's also the last step of all the flow. When it comes to, there's a crucial element of this final part, which is the trigger, right? And as you have seen, triggers can be both inbound and outbound, so either generated by you or generated by people that came and interacted with whatever digital assets you have. But you can also divide triggers into static triggers, for example, when you publish something new, and then you just want to inform whoever is in your CRM about what you have created, or dynamic triggers, which are more inbound and when it's other people interacting with anything digital that you have. Examples of dynamic triggers are, for example, when a lead watches 30% of your webinar, then can trigger a personalized follow-up. When an account interacts with an X number of pieces of content, or when a research stakeholder downloads a report, for example. Now, we have looked at all the steps of the sprint. Let's see how you can wrap it up into a 30-day sequence so that you can learn at speed. The goal, by the way, is to turn AI experiment into something predictable so that it can generate predictable improvements, where you want to test as little as possible to learn with only one hypothesis, one segment of audience, and then one workflow at a time. So here is how you want to execute the 30 days AI sprint. First of all, you start by defining a clear, testable hypothesis. Second of all, you build what we have called a minimum viable workflow with few signals, simple personalization, and one trigger. Then you run it unchanged for 30 days and collect data. And then lastly, what you want to do within this 30 days is to track fast metrics like, for example, engagement, replies, content interaction, but not so much the final end of your funnel, because especially if you are into sales cycles with a very long time, then chances are that it will take multiple months before you see a final conversion. So what you want to do is to target the early signals of the funnel. As you will see in 30 days, it's not every experiment is the same from this point of view. So within 30 days, there is not always the chance to collect enough data, which means that say that what you want to test is how people that interact with content on your website react to newsletter and email activation. So for example, if they visit a specific page of your blog, then they receive an email targeting them saying, hey, by the way, you might also find this content interesting. And then another email saying, oh, we also have a whole podcast that talks about that. Well, if you only have 4 people visiting a specific page in 1 month, probably you will not have enough data to test with. So the idea of this is also focus on those data streams that allow you to experiment fast. And then a final note, don't forget to document everything, because documenting is what allows you to go back to the experiments that you have run and keep improving. Now, this was the end of this masterclass. Few key takeaways. First of all, AI gives you access to better data and better workflows. The fact that they're better doesn't mean that they're perfect. It also doesn't mean that you can completely do without manual presence. Second of all, the quality of the final output is only as good as the quality of the initial data. Third, even with great initial data, multi-step sequences can still go wrong, which is the reason why you still want to have some form of manual checking here. And then you now have a framework that you can use to test and learn within 30 days. I want to thank you. This was the first official event of Encodex. As we said before, for the launch of Encodex this month, we have a special offer where we offer for free a workshop to assess your internal processes and then create a personalized AI roadmap for your company. If you're interested, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. Thanks a lot.